Imagine a missile capable of crossing the sky at over Mach 5, so fast that no defense system on Earth can react in time. This is the weapon Russia insisted was impossible to stop. But what if there were a way to fool the missile's own brain, making it miss its target without firing a single shot? Ukraine just did exactly that, using a tactic no one saw coming. And the most impressive part, it all starts with a signal the Kremlin never imagined could be turned against them. But to understand why this Ukrainian tactic has become a nightmare for Moscow, we first need to look at the weapon Russia treated as its ultimate trump card: hypersonic missiles. These belong to a category of weapons capable of traveling above Mach 5, more than 6,000 kilometers per hour, and they bring a second element that makes everything even more dangerous: the ability to maneuver in mid-flight. This constant change of trajectory prevents any air defense from calculating a reliable interception point. It is nothing like a regular ballistic missile. Here, the target does not follow a predictable path. It shifts, accelerates, corrects, and vanishes from radar in fractions of a second. This combination of extreme speed and unpredictability is what turned hypersonics into one of the most feared technologies in modern warfare. In the Russian arsenal, the most emblematic is the Kh-47 M2 Kinzhal. Officially, it can reach Mach 10, nearly 12,000 kilometers per hour, covering huge distances in minutes. It can carry either conventional or nuclear warheads, and that alone amplifies the psychological impact of the weapon every time it is detected. The Kinzhal is usually launched by aircraft such as the MiG-31K, specially adapted for this role, or by bombers like the Tu-22 M3, which release the missile already at high altitude and high speed. As soon as it detaches from the aircraft, it accelerates until it reaches hypersonic velocity and continues on an attack route that is practically impossible to track. Until recently, this was Moscow's perfect card, a missile no defense system in the world could react to in time, and Ukraine has felt that firsthand. In several attacks, Kinzhals struck depots, urban centers, and military facilities, leaving deep craters and entire blocks destroyed. The images show twisted structures, debris scattered everywhere, and rescue teams working amid buildings that simply ceased to exist. Even advanced systems like Patriot, considered a benchmark in interception, face enormous difficulty against this kind of threat. The reaction time is minimal, the trajectory unpredictable, and any miscalculation means a guaranteed impact. For a long time, the Kinzhal seemed untouchable until Ukraine discovered a way to attack the missile where it least expected it, in the very system that guides its path. To understand how Ukraine managed to turn a hypersonic missile against its own launcher, we need to look at a type of combat that almost never appears in war footage: electronic warfare. Instead of cannons, projectiles, or anti-air batteries, it uses something invisible yet devastating: control of the electromagnetic spectrum. In this arena, everything revolves around three main actions: interfering, blocking, or deceiving. This is what we call jamming and spoofing. Jamming tries to drown the enemy's sensors in noise, flooding the frequencies used by navigation, radar, and communication systems. Spoofing goes further. It creates false signals, carefully shaped to imitate the information the equipment expects to receive. Instead of blocking the missile, you convince it that it is somewhere else, and that detail changes everything. Within that logic, LIMA was born, one of the most ingenious systems Ukraine has fielded since the beginning of the war. It is not an interceptor, it does not fire missiles, it does not physically bring anything down. Its purpose is far more subtle: to manipulate the brain of Russian missiles. Designed specifically to counter precision weapons guided by satellite, LIMA operates as an advanced electronic warfare station built to defeat strikes that were once considered unavoidable. It is operated by the unit known as Night Watch, a specialized group that works close to the front line, choosing strategic positions to maximize range and the effect of its interference. It is a job that demands silence, calculation, and patience, because when a hypersonic missile is inbound, there is no second chance. What sets LIMA apart is exactly this invisible approach. Instead of trying to intercept the missile during its terminal run, when it is already traveling at absurd speeds, the system acts earlier, manipulating what the missile believes to be its own route. The goal is not to destroy the weapon, but to make it lose its way. And when a multi-million-dollar missile travels straight into the wrong location, the result is just as effective as shooting it down, only without spending a single projectile. But how does this interference actually work? The answer lies in spoofing. The Kinzhal, like other modern missiles, uses a combination of inertial navigation with corrections provided by satellite signals such as GPS and GLONASS. Inertial navigation is accurate, but it accumulates error over the course of the flight. That is why satellites act as constant correctors, placing the missile back on track. What LIMA does is replace those signals with false but convincing versions. It creates an environment in which the missile believes it is exactly where it is not. As the missile travels at speeds above Mach 5, LIMA injects data packets that fool the GNSS receiver. Each false correction triggers a small deviation, and as the inertial system compensates based on these manipulated readings, the error multiplies with every update. The missile does not realize it has been deceived. It simply follows a path it believes is correct. When it approaches the target area, the sum of these distorted adjustments causes it to fall hundreds of meters away from the programmed point. For a hypersonic missile, that is enough to turn a devastating strike into an explosion in the middle of an empty area. LIMA's brilliance lies precisely in that subtlety, not confronting brute force, but attacking the system's internal logic. And that detail completely shifts the balance on the battlefield, because it proves that not even the weapons Moscow treated as invincible are truly immune to Ukrainian ingenuity. The story becomes even more provocative when we get to the most unexpected element of this operation: the music. And not just any music, but a song deeply rooted in Ukrainian identity. Our Father is Bandera. Stepan Bandera was a central figure in 20th century Ukrainian nationalism, seen by many Ukrainians as a symbol of resistance against foreign occupation. For Russia, however, the name Bandera has become a propaganda label used to attack Ukraine, portraying him as an enemy of the Russian state. The fact that Ukraine used that very song as part of the signals inserted into Russian missiles is a calculated provocation. It is mockery turned into a military tool. While the missile tries to read the information that defines its route, what it receives is a mix of false data, accompanied by an anthem carrying decades of historical tension. That does not change the physics of the flight, but it affects something just as valuable: morale and narrative. It is as if Ukraine were saying that it can not only manipulate Russia's most advanced weapons, but do so while making fun of the enemy. This kind of action perfectly symbolizes what we call asymmetric warfare. When a country with fewer resources has to face an adversary with far more means and technology, the path is not to match strength, but to exploit creativity. Ukraine has done this repeatedly. Instead of trying to compete with Russia's conventional power, it leans on unlikely, low-cost, and highly effective solutions. A clear example is the improvised naval drones that struck Russian ships in the Black Sea without Ukraine having to put crewed vessels at risk. Another example is the long-range aerial drones, many built with commercial components, that manage to hit targets inside Russian territory. These methods do not emerge out of luxury, but out of necessity, and they show how innovation can tip the scales even against a larger, better-equipped army. And LIMA is one of the most striking expressions of that logic. Its impact is not only technical, but strategic. The number of diverted missiles has already become significant, enough to change Russian calculations about the efficiency and cost-effectiveness of their strikes. Every lost Kinzhal represents millions of dollars wasted. It is an extremely expensive weapon that requires maintenance, logistics, specialized aircraft, and flight hours to be deployed. When a missile of that caliber misses its target because of a system that costs a fraction of that, the damage is devastating, financially and psychologically. For Moscow, it is not just an operational failure. It is a constant reminder that its most advanced systems do not work as planned. For Kyiv, it is proof that creativity remains its most powerful weapon, capable of turning the game where no one expected it. The LIMA episode makes one thing unmistakably clear. We are watching an accelerated transformation in how war is fought. Electronic warfare, once treated as a supporting component, has now become one of the central pillars of modern combat. Every advance on the battlefield, every new threat, every system deployed by Russia or Ukraine forces an immediate response in the electromagnetic spectrum. What used to be secondary now determines who sees, who communicates, who navigates, and who hits the target. The speed with which Ukraine developed interference and spoofing solutions shows how this domain is evolving at the pace of war, and how future offensives will be waged less with armored vehicles and more with signals, algorithms, and digital precision. On the modern battlefield, whoever controls the spectrum controls the initiative. And for Russia, this creates a dilemma. that was never part of the initial plan. The Kinzhal was sold domestically as an unstoppable weapon, a technological jewel that placed Moscow ahead of any enemy. But when a missile of that caliber starts failing against a system that does not fire a single shot, the narrative loses power. The Kremlin now has to revise its tactics, update protocols, rethink how it employs its most expensive weapons, and even face the possibility that part of its arsenal does not deliver what it promises. That generates political strain, military frustration, and economic pressure. Each wasted Kinzhal does not represent only a financial hit, it poses a difficult question. If even the most advanced weapons are not working as they should, what else might be vulnerable? In the end, LIMA becomes more than a defensive tool. It symbolizes the essence of this war, a contest between brute force and ingenuity. Ukraine has shown that even with fewer resources, it can confront a larger adversary by exploiting innovation, adaptation, and strategic creativity. From improvised drones to electronic warfare systems capable of bending the path of a hypersonic missile, each solution reflects a resilience that goes beyond technology. It comes from necessity, urgency, and survival. This war is redefining the rules of the 21st century, showing that the conflicts of the future will be decided in both the physical and digital domains. And while Russia struggles to understand how to respond, Ukraine keeps proving that sometimes the most powerful weapon is not the heaviest one, but the smartest. The battlefield has changed, and anyone who fails to follow that change will be left behind. And the most interesting part is that this shift on the battlefield is not happening only in the air. It is already shaping what happens on the ground as well, where every Russian mistake is beginning to trigger chain reactions. If you want to understand how a single Ukrainian strike set off a response that Moscow simply cannot contain in Pokrovsk, click on the video that is appearing on your screen. And do not forget to subscribe to the Military Ground. See you there.